Right. Diving in again with another deep dive. And wow, you guys have given us a lot to think about with this one. This collection of Bob Camblin stuff. I mean, we've got quotes, poems, even some sketchbook pages, you said, and then a whole book review about his art. It
Yeah.
seems like you're really trying to get inside this artist's head, how he sees the world.
Yeah.
And to be honest, after looking it over, I am too. It's really amazing. He just sees connections everywhere.
Mhm.
Nature, philosophy, art, even magic kind of swirling together.
Right.
It's incredible. Luckily, we have an expert here who is fantastic at figuring these things out. I mean, creative expression, finding the deeper meanings in art, that's your thing.
I do love a good puzzle.
So let's lay it all out. We've got Camblin's own words, those direct quotes. We've got a glimpse inside his thinking through the poems and sketches, and then this really fascinating review to guide us. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to figure out Bob Camblin, what he's all about. What is he trying to tell us through his art? What is at the core of his vision? Are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. I'm ready. And one thing that jumps out at me right away is Camblin really pushing against the idea of art being something separate from life.
Oh yeah, it's not art for art's sake with him at all.
Not at all.
In fact, he says, quote, art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake. So it's like art is essential. It's part of who we are, part of being human.
Right. It's like breathing.
Totally.
And the artist himself, he's almost like a revolutionary.
Oh, wow.
Camblin calls the artist a free agent, not bound by all of society's expectations. He says, the artist today is the only free agent. He is not committed except so much as he desires it.
That's powerful. It's like a manifesto for artistic freedom.
Yeah.
But was Camblin really a free agent, though? I mean, do you think his life actually reflected this ideal? Or was this something he was always reaching for, striving for?
That's a great question. I mean, I think there are clues in his work. You can see these hints of doubt, you know? Like
Yeah.
he's wrestling with the very things that he's talking about.
No, interesting.
Like when he mentions being close to capturing some essential truth in his art, but it, and I'm quoting here, never yet stands completely free of me except so very few pieces. And then he admits, their freedom frightens me. I mean, that's really raw.
That is, it's really vulnerable, even for someone like Camblin. I mean, creating something truly authentic, it was a struggle. It makes me think about how that free agent ideal plays out for any artist. You know, the push and pull between what they want to express and all the pressures from the outside world.
Totally. And it's so interesting how that idea of freedom ties into this other big theme in his work, nature.
Yes.
It's like he doesn't just observe nature, he learns from it. It's like nature completes him somehow.
You can really see that in his poems and those sketchbook entries, the way he writes about dragonflies, sandpipers, I mean, even clouds and trees. He finds so much beauty and meaning in these like little everyday things. It's like he's saying, hey, pay attention. There's magic all around you.
Absolutely. He even says it straight out. Find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. It's a beautiful idea, just yielding to something larger than yourself.
Surrender. It's not just passive observation, though.
Right.
He takes these principles from nature and he applies them to his own life, to his art.
Yeah.
Like that really interesting observation about the hawk and the path of least resistance. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, he's watching this hawk soaring effortlessly, riding these thermal updrafts. And to him, it's a metaphor. It's like, this is how we should approach the challenges in our lives.
I see.
It's about finding that inner rhythm movement, he calls it, IRM, syncing up with the natural flow.
IRM. So how would someone actually tap into that IRM? Is it about being more mindful, more in tune with the world around us?
I think it is about cultivating a certain kind of awareness, like a sensitivity to these subtle cues and patterns, the ones that exist both inside ourselves and in the world all around us. And Camblin talks about stillness a lot, quieting your mind to really see, and he has this amazing quote. He walked by so slow that my writing slowed, my heart and also the wind.
Wow. So he's tapping into this deeper level of perceptions beyond just the surface, right?
Absolutely. And he actually talks about moving past something he calls intellectual seeing to get to magic seeing. So intellectual seeing might lead to art, but magic seeing leads to understanding and also to art.
Oh, wow.
And he differentiates the two by saying intellectual seeing is tied to culture, but magic seeing is tied to the endless part of life.
That's fascinating. So it's about connecting with something primal, something beyond how we've been taught to see. And that makes me think of all those other quotes where he talks about observation being still, like
Huh.
one must learn not to look but to see, or when you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. It's almost like a Zen approach, isn't it?
Definitely. He even mentions Zazen directly.
Yeah.
It's about getting that quiet mind, right? So you can have this deeper perception, this intuitive understanding, and it goes beyond logic. And for Camblin, that's where the real magic happens.
This is amazing. I mean, this is so much more than just looking at pretty pictures. You're right. There's so many layers here. I'm already seeing Camblin in a whole new light.
You know, it's really incredible how Camblin finds these really profound moments in the most ordinary things, like these tiny details most of us would just completely miss.
He really does elevate the everyday. You start seeing things differently. It's like he's saying, don't ignore those little things. They're all connected to something so much bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And this leads into a really interesting concept that he explores, the ecology of art. Do you remember that piece he wrote?
Yeah, wasn't he comparing artists to, like, ecologists?
Yeah, exactly. He's arguing that artists, just like ecologists, have this really vital role to play in maintaining balance in the world.
Balance. What does that balance even look like, though? He doesn't really define it, does he?
Well, true to form, Camlin leaves us with more questions than answers.
Right.
But I think it has something to do with pushing back against those forces that try to, like, homogenize us, make us all conform.
So artists are like these disruptors, bringing in diversity and change.
Oh, I like that. And Camlin actually warns against a world where everything becomes just in, for, or about. It's like he's worried about this flattening of culture, a loss of individuality.
Yes, scary to think
Yeah.
about, which makes his emphasis on personal expression even more important. He says, art is not in some far-off place. A work of art is the expression of a man's whole personality, sensibility, and ability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the complete opposite of trying to fit in, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's about bringing your full self to your art. But then, kind of paradoxically, he also seems to really value anonymity. Remember that quote about the dilemma of the artist he calls it a disposable art culture?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Where he talks about artists getting trapped by this need to always be new, to
Mhm.
constantly reinvent themselves just to stay relevant.
Right. And his solution is, and I'm quoting again, if they aren't new, stay anonymous and you are free, at least from friends.
It's so classic Camblin. I mean, true freedom comes from letting go of that need for external validation. It makes you wonder about his own journey as an artist, though.
Yeah.
Did he actually achieve that freedom, or was he always chasing it?
Well, we can only really speculate, but there are these moments in his work, like these little glimmers of self-doubt, where it seems like he's really wrestling with all of these ideas.
I see what you mean.
There's that passage where he talks about being so close to capturing a certain truth in his art, but and I'm quoting here again, quote, never yet stands completely free of me, except so very few pieces. And then he says, their freedom frightens me. It's such a vulnerable thing to
It
admit.
is.
It shows that even for Camblin, someone we see as this icon, making truly authentic art was a real struggle.
It's funny because it's actually really encouraging. He's not some guru who has it all figured out. He's right there with us, trying to understand these big questions, trying to make sense of it all through his art.
Absolutely. And speaking of grappling with big questions, we can't avoid talking about Camblin's, well, his fascination with time. I mean, he doesn't experience it linearly, does he?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So like he folds it, bends it, plays with it however he wants.
It's everywhere in his poems, all these fragmented images jumping back and forth between past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Even in his quotes, you can see his mind is not bound by our conventional ideas about time. Like when he says, being aware of history, we are in fact living in the past, present, and looking into the future.
That's wild. It's like we're not just moving through time, we're actually holding it all within us. It's a pretty huge concept to wrap your head around.
It is, and it connects to another really interesting idea of his, time travel at the speed of enlightenment. What do you make of that one?
It feels like he's saying that true understanding, enlightenment, it transcends time. It's not about reaching some point in the future. It's about accessing this wisdom that's always been there inside us.
Exactly. And maybe that's what he's trying to do with his art, create these little portals or windows into that timeless realm. He's not just recording what he sees. He's trying to capture something deeper, something eternal.
Something beyond. It brings us right back to that idea of magic seeing, that ability to see past the surface. And he contrasts it with intellectual seeing, saying intellectual seeing may lead to art. Magic seeing leads to understanding and also to art. So what makes this magic seeing so special to Camblin?
Well, he says that magic seeing is tied to the endless part of life. It's not bound by our cultural limitations. He actually challenges us to resist learning so we can learn to fail, to relax, to feel, and to really think.
To really think.
It's a call to tap into that deeper level of perception, one that connects us to something way bigger than ourselves.
So it's about letting go of that need to control everything, to overanalyze everything intellectually, and instead just embracing a more intuitive, feeling-based way of experiencing the world. It sounds a lot like what he's doing with nature, surrendering to something larger than himself.
I think you've hit on a really important connection there. This surrendering, this letting go. It seems to be a recurring theme in all of Camblin's work.
Yeah, it's like he's challenging us to look at the world with a sense of childlike wonder, to see the magic in the everyday, and to trust our own inner wisdom.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. And it ties into another aspect of his work that we've only kind of touched on so far, his embrace of absurdity.
Well, yeah, it's like he's constantly dancing between embracing the absurd and finding this really profound meaning within it. It's not just about being silly. It's about using absurdity as this tool to break down rigid thinking, you know?
Yeah, it's like he's saying, hey, let's shake things up a bit. Don't take it all so seriously, but be open to finding meaning in the most unexpected places.
I like that.
And he uses humor a lot to get this point across. There's this playful wit that runs through all of his work, even when he's dealing with really complex philosophical ideas.
Oh, absolutely. Like that quote, when understood, all truth is funny.
Yeah.
It's such a simple statement, but it really makes you stop and think.
Right.
It's like he's challenging us to find the humor in being human, to laugh at our own contradictions.
Yeah. And this ties into his idea of fooling the eye, fooling the mind. But it's not about deception. It's more about using illusion and paradox to kind of shift our perspective, to make us see the world in a new way.
It reminds me of those optical illusions, the ones that make you question what you're actually seeing.
Yeah.
They force you to reevaluate everything you thought you knew
Yeah.
and realize that maybe reality isn't as straightforward as we think it is.
Exactly. And Camblin takes this concept beyond just the visual, He applies it to our thinking, our beliefs, even the very structures that we build our lives around.
It all comes back to the figure four trap once again. It's not just a physical object. It's this powerful metaphor for all the traps we get caught in, both literally and figuratively.
And remember that amazing quote from the YouTube video where he says, perhaps this is not a snare at all. Perhaps it is a reminder that most of what holds us back only exists if we let it.
That is so powerful. It's a great reminder that we actually have a choice. We can choose to be defined by these structures, or we can recognize them for what they are and step outside of them.
It's about taking back control. And that idea of stepping outside of these predefined structures actually connects to another really important part of Camblin's philosophy, his emphasis on process over product. He says, success will be another failure. Process and awareness of it cannot be failure.
So it's not about reaching some end goal. It's more about the journey, the exploration, the constant evolution.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, don't get so fixated on the destination. Enjoy the ride. The real learning, the real growth, it happens in that messy, imperfect process of creating.
It's such a freeing idea.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off. You don't have to create something perfect or finished. It allows for experimentation, for mistakes, even for those unexpected discoveries you make along the way. Which reminds me of how he talks about the hunch, the inspiration, the solution seemingly appearing magically.
It's like he's advocating for a more holistic approach to creativity, one that engages your whole self, not just your intellect.
He even says resist learning so we can learn to fail, to relax, to feel, to really think. It's pretty radical, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, in a world that's so obsessed with knowledge and achievement, he's actually encouraging us to let go of control, to trust our instincts, to embrace the unknown.
I think that might be the ultimate lesson we can take away from Bob Camblin. To approach life and art with a sense of curiosity, openness, and a willingness to embrace the paradoxical, the absurd, and the unexpected.
To find beauty in the mundane, meaning in the meaningless, and freedom in the act of letting go.
To fool the eye, fool the mind, and by doing so, awaken to a deeper, more authentic way of seeing the world.
That was beautiful. I think we did it. We navigated the intricate and often paradoxical world of Bob Camblin. What started as this collection of seemingly random pieces has transformed into this incredible tapestry of interconnected ideas, pushing us to question, to explore, and to be okay with not knowing everything. We've laughed, we've thought deeply, and hopefully we've all expanded our minds a little bit along the way. And to you, dear listener, we leave you with this. What will you do with this new understanding? How will you apply these insights from Camblin to your own life, to your own creative endeavors? Keep those questions swirling in your mind. Keep searching, keep creating. Until next time, happy deep diving.